Hello, Iron Disciples. It is the beautiful time of study. We are having a Bible study today on Matthew 15. But before we get into that, let me regale you with a story about how we got RFK'd. Now, if you don't know what that means, it's okay because we just made it up 5 minutes ago. But we were talking heavily about RFK and the presidential dynamics that are upcoming. We must have said his name 100 times. And the first time ever StreamYard has had trouble uploading our program was today, immediately after having this conversation. So I'll leave that up to you guys in this day of conspiracies and algorithms and satanic AI. All right. Why you couldn't get your streaming of Iron Disciples tonight at the scheduled time. We'll let you place the blame. Okay. All right. So we're gonna get into it. Read some Matthew 15. We got the ESV. I was going to call it the RSV. All right.
RFKV.
Nice. RFKV. We're starting in with Fauci and vaccines tonight, boy. Okay, I'll start, I guess. Matthew 15, the word of God. Then Pharisees and scribes came to Jesus from Jerusalem and said, "Why do your disciples break the tradition of the elders? For they do not wash their hands when they eat." He answered them, "And why do you break the commandment of God for the sake of your tradition? For God commanded, 'Honor your father and your mother,' and whoever reviles father or mother must surely die. But you say, if anyone tells his father or his mother, 'What you would have gained from me is given to God,' he need not honor his father. So for the sake of your tradition, you have made void the word of God, you hypocrites. Well did Isaiah prophesy of you when he said, 'This people honors me with their lips, but their heart is far from me. In vain do they worship me, teaching as doctrines the commandments of men.' And he called the people to him and said to them, 'Hear and understand. It is not what goes into the mouth that defiles a person, but what comes out of the mouth. This defiles a person.' Then the disciples came and said to him, 'Do you know that the Pharisees were offended when they heard this saying?' He answered, 'Every plant that my heavenly Father has not planted will be rooted up. Let them alone. They are blind guides. And if the blind lead the blind, both will fall into a pit.' But Peter said to him, 'Explain the parable to us.' And he said, 'You are you also still without understanding? Do not you see that whatever goes into the mouth passes into the stomach and is expelled? But what comes out of the mouth proceeds from the heart, and this defiles a person. For out of the heart come evil thoughts, murder, adultery, sexual immorality, theft, false witness, slander. These are what defile a person. But to eat with unwashed hands does not defile anyone." And Jesus went away from there, excuse me, and withdrew to the district of Tyre and Sidon. And behold, a Canaanite woman from that region came out and was crying, "Have mercy on me, O Lord, Son of David. My daughter is severely oppressed by a demon." But he did not answer her a word. And his disciples came and begged him, saying, "Send her away, for she is crying out after us." He answered, "I was sent only to the lost sheep of the house of Israel." But she came and knelt before him, saying, "Lord, help me." And he answered, "It is not right to take the children's bread and throw it to the dogs." She said, "Yes, Lord, yet even the dogs eat the crumbs that fall from their master's table." Then Jesus answered her, "O woman, great is your faith. Be it done for you as you desire." And her daughter was healed instantly. Jesus went on from there and walked beside the Sea of Galilee, And he went up on the mountain and sat down there. And great crowds came to him, bringing with them the lame, the blind, the crippled, the mute, and many others. And they put them at his feet, and he healed them. So the crowd wondered when they saw the mute speaking, the crippled healthy, the lame walking, and the blind seeing. And they glorified the God of Israel. Then Jesus called his disciples to him and said, I have compassion on the crowd, because they have been with me now 3 days and have nothing to eat. And I am unwilling to send them away hungry, lest they faint on the way. And the disciples said to him, Where are we to get enough food in such a desolate place to feed so great a crowd? And Jesus said to them, How many loaves do you have? They said, 7, and a few small fish. And directing the crowd to sit down on the ground, he took the 7 loaves and the fish, and having given thanks, he broke them and gave them to the disciples. And the disciples gave them to the crowds, and they all ate and were satisfied. And they took up 7 baskets full of the broken pieces left over. Those who ate were 4,000 men, besides women and children. And after sending away the crowds, he got into the boat and went to the region of Magadan.
All righty. Well, now we got the notes. And I love this first part. Like, I remember thinking back now, the first part of this chapter where he's calling out the Pharisees on this tradition thing they're talking about. The context we get in the notes here just like sheds some major light on that, especially in relation to our last conversation on money and like tithing and stuff. Because you'll see it's kind of like he's pointing fingers at them. Like, I think they get, what did they give? They were giving their money that they should have been taking care of their parents with to the church.
So that they could double dip.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we're going to find that out.
It's a hard one to understand on the surface. You kind of have to have a better understanding of Jewish religious law and sort of the politicking going on.
Yep. All right. Terms and people. The tradition of the elders. This phrase was used to indicate the Mishnah. The Mishnah was a book of traditions made and passed on by the scribes and the Pharisees. This book meant as an auxiliary work to support the God-inspired books of the Bible, eventually overtook the God-inspired canon in importance, becoming the spine of Jewish tradition. Isaiah means Yahweh is salvation, or God saves. Isaiah was quoted more than any other Old Testament prophet in the gospel. He knew who Jesus was and wanted us to be ready to recognize the Savior. This man was close to God and kept his iron sharp by keeping his fellowship with powerful men of God, the prophet Micah and the king Hezekiah. The book of Isaiah was written over 2,500 years ago, Isaiah being responsible for writing roughly the first half of the book. Isaiah is credited with some of the most beautiful application of language when describing the many themes within his book. He is commonly referred to as the Shakespeare of the First Testament. Isaiah loved a life of sacrifice, spending 3 years naked as a sign of wonder to the Egyptians, displaying his absolute obedience to God. What a stallion of a man. Canaanite, descendants of Noah's son Ham, inhabited the land of Canaan, which now encompasses modern-day Lebanon, Israel, and parts of Jordan and Syria. The Canaanites were cursed because of Ham and Canaan's sin against their father Noah. The land of Canaan was a promised land promised to Abraham's descendants. When Moses sent spies to Canaan, they were blown away by the abundance of the land. It took 2 men to carry back 1 cluster of grapes. They were also shocked at the size and power of the people, which included Nephilim, half angel, half men, the size of giants, and their heavily fortified cities. It took the Israelites 40 years in the desert to toughen up before Joshua and Caleb had the faith and courage to bring down the walls of Jericho and start dominating the lands of Canaan. Even at Israel's zenith, the Canaanites maintained several strongholds, not a people to be taken lightly. Megadon,
I think so.
the city Christ went to after feeding the 4,000. It was on the west shore of the Sea of Galilee. It was also home of Mary Magdalene. Tiberias is believed to be its modern day location. All right, so this is this part on what we were just talking about, Jesus, and you called it Jesus pulling logs out of the Pharisees' eyes. Remember reading in Matthew 12 how the Pharisees tried to nail Jesus on a Sabbath violation for picking grain? Well, they are at it again. Here we see the Pharisees dishing out judgment because of a violation of improper washing before eating. As we have covered, the Mishnah was a book of man-made rules covering virtually every aspect of Jewish life. It included ceremonial washing of hands before eating and the washing of dishes and pots. To be clear, it's not that washing and being clean is a bad thing. No. Even John the Baptist, rough as he was, probably kept a tidy hut. We can all agree that cleanliness is an essential habit and should be carried out to the best of our ability. However, cleanliness is not the point of this passage. The validity of God's law is. In Matthew 12, Jesus had to set the Pharisees straight on what the Sabbath was. The Pharisees had gutted the Sabbath by turning it into a bundle of little rules and regs that had nothing to do with the original God-given purpose. The heart of the Sabbath law was lost on them. And if you can see that today with Orthodox Jews. We've come across a couple of reels on these Orthodox Jews. They have these products specially made for Sabbath on like making coffee and special lights they put beside their bed that are like legal on Sabbath. It's like they just missed the whole point.
Yeah.
It's like, do you think God's dumb? Like you're getting around his laws just by like inventing products or leaving lights on the night before? It's like, oh my word.
I don't think, yeah.
This time in Matthew 15, Jesus is more extreme. He says, it's not that you guys got this law wrong. It's that this law does not exist. It's completely made up. And to further cement his stance on man-made laws, dismissing the Mishnah as an extension of God's law, thereby dispelling Pharisaic power and their agency as spiritual leaders, Jesus calls them out on a huge violation of God's law, honoring your parents. Let's break down this segment and its implications. Matthew 15:3. And why do you break the commandment of God for the sake of your tradition? For God commanded, honor your father and your mother, and whoever reviles father or mother must surely die. But you say, if anyone tells his father or his mother, what you would have gained from me is given to God, he need not honor his father. For the sake of your tradition, you have made void the word of God, you hypocrites. So we got a couple points here. Number one, for the sake of your traditions. Here, Jesus is directly casting down the Mishnah for what it is, man-made traditions that had been lifted into the place of God's law by men seeking power. The Mishnah is not a law, it is tradition. Jesus strips the Pharisees of any power they assumed they had over him by virtue of their position of power and knowledge of the Mishnah. Number two, for God commanded, honor your father and your mother. Here, Jesus establishes the real law. The law of God is not up for debate. The law of God is eternal and unchanging and will be fulfilled through perfect judgment. End of story. And number three, but you say, if anyone tells his father or his mother, what would you have gained from me is given to God. Here's where it gets a little tricky. So we need precision to capture the heart of this. Jesus says anyone, but it's not anyone in a general sense. It's anyone of the Pharisees and Mishnah observing Jews he is addressing. Now that we have determined the audience, we can consult Jewish history and culture to reveal the context. Here's how the Pharisees used their tradition to get around the law of God. They would pronounce a vow of their things, money, land, food items, with the word korban, meaning it is a gift. See track, what's that word?
Nedarim.
Nedarim, so it's a book within the Mishnah, or it's a part of the Mishnah. The word korban is based on the word in Leviticus for bringing something near to God. So if because of greed, for example, a man did not want to help support his aging parents, he would announce korban on the items of value. That would mean that the valuables were frozen and could not be used for taking care of the parents. Thus, they could use their traditions to get out of taking care of their father and mother, which God's law required.
Sneaky.
Then they might find a way of nullifying their vow, so they ended up keeping the money. The clever tradition of swearing and taking oaths had grown up as a way around a clear-cut teaching of the Word of God. slimy, greasy, heartless, but completely accepted in Jewish culture. Jesus has used simple logic to dismiss the Mishnah by the Mishnah standards. The logic goes as follows. The Mishnah is meant to support and protect the law of God. So if it contradicts the law or supersedes it in any way, it violates its own purpose, thereby nullifying its usefulness.
Boom, baby. Deal with it. Deal with it. It's all, every one of us every day right there.
I wonder how they would nullify their vow.
Well, they always have, so it's like nullifying a vow. They have a committee that gets together of other Pharisees and Sadducees, Sanhedrin, and they would weigh in. You can't just make these decisions yourself. Okay.
Kind of like the Catholics
So,
abolishing a marriage.
they're like,
what do they call that?
I think Fred honestly needs to sell this land. And Fred may have had a talk with Bill, who's saying this, saying, okay, a little bit of it too. You know, let's grease all these wheels so that it rolls in the direction I need. But it was commonplace, you know.
Yeah.
You have to think money, like you were talking about, the light switches and all those little devices to make their lives easier by still abiding by the law. That was the preoccupation of the Mishnah. So, like attorneys, you can use the law to your advantage if you know it very, very well. But for the people that are dumb, that don't know the law, they're the ones getting, exploited. So, same exact situation we got now.
Yeah, if you want something really interesting, look up the fishing line that's around. I think it's somewhere in Manhattan, New York area. They have because I don't think they're supposed to leave their residence or something on Sabbath. So they literally considered the fishing line that they put up with all the power lines is also part of it's boxes them in so they're safe to go inside. And apparently that's in multiple cities. That's like been their strategy on getting past that rule.
Sneaky.
Yeah.
The whole city.
It's not the whole city. It's like a section. It must be like a Jewish part of the city, kind of like we have the Amish here.
See, this is an excellent example of what we were talking about before. So for you guys, our disciples, I personally have been attempting to define truth better and get better at seeing the forest from the trees. I want to get better at that. Okay. Mm-hmm. What I have found is that seeing the world in symbols, much more like parabolic stories, if you can adjust your brain and heart to see things from the value of a symbol, the semantic won't overtake it. So I'm going to use this as a good example, right? So they take the semantic of dwelling place, right? And they say, well, these chords are above me, so they could be like a dwelling place. They're connected to my dwelling place, right? They use reason and logic and the semantic to kind of whittle it down. But if you were to think about that symbolically, we would know that the home is where you break bread, eat, spend time with your family. That's the definition of home. That's the symbolic definition of home.
Yeah.
Right? So that's the problem.
It's like the heart of the law versus the letter of the law, I think is the phrase.
Doesn't that say the heart of the law? What does that say? We're talking symbolically there. The heart of the law. I could say the meaning of the law, but that wouldn't be enough. I say the heart of the law,
intention almost, or intention
because it's the life-giving properties of the law. The law is supposed to give life. It's not supposed to condemn life. Right?
I just thought of another funny one. It's the Mormons. If you want to look up something hilarious, look up soaking. And that's how the Mormons get around abstinence.
That sounds weird. Why'd you just say it? What is it? Soaking?
Dave,
they whack off inside of their...
Like, pull up the Urban Dictionary on that or something. It's
Does it have to do with masturbation?
No. It's like how they like bang each other while not banging each other.
Soaking. Sounds like edging.
So I'm just going to read this verbatim, so it's ridiculous. Soaking. Some Mormon teens have convinced themselves that putting a penis in a vagina and then not moving is not sex. This is called soaking.
Wow.
Now, the jump man is the person who will jump on the bed next to you, soaking to get some friction going.
It's a three
without technically moving.
It's a threesome,
so they have someone that's like moving the bed around, basically
They should just get like a bed
Vibrating
that moves.
beds,
Yeah,
bro,
no,
like those
those
old
old style hotel beds.
Yeah, just
in
go
the shape of like a heart, dude.
Oh my word.
See, they're very Jewish. That's another
That's a total-
semantic backdoor caveat that you can create if you dismiss the symbolic nature of meaning. Jonathan Paggio, thank you, because he kind of opened the door to being able. That's what we have, though. Is like, you think that God communicates with words? He is the word.
Mhm.
So he made the thing that you're trying to attach little words to describe the thing.
Yeah.
So it's the thingness of it, and it will liberate your mind and heart if you can see that way. That's what Jesus just did for them. He's like, your Mishnah, if it can't even defend the law, why do you have it? What is your Mishnah now accomplishing? You are now offending your parents. The Decalogue says, honor your parents,
Right.
honor their father.
But
honor
as
their mother.
we, it's still very modern because we listened to that Dennis Prager conversation with Pints of Aquinas, and you could just see in Dennis like he's a modern Jew, and they just view actions as all that matter. And if
That's
you're
why the
technically
Bible-
doing the action wrong, it doesn't matter what your thoughts are.
That's what it says over and over again. I'm reading this book. It says it was offered up to me by Father Turbo to begin being a father. And it's a short book. And the contents go as follows. It's not what your kids are doing wrong. It's the heart of your kids, because out of the outflow of your heart, they will do certain things. And so the Bible says, I'll judge you by your heart, not about your semantic breakdown of rationality. He doesn't care.
Who does what guy in the Bible like plays that out perfectly? That God cares about his heart the most, even though his actions were pretty terrible. David.
Paul, yeah. Oh, David, yeah. I mean,
Because Paul didn't have an active relationship with God before, like when he was murdering Christians. But David had an active relationship, very alive with God, and he's still screwing up big time. But God cared most about his heart.
yeah, that's what he cares about us all, because he sees our heart, and the symbol of belief is a pure heart. That's what he says over and over again. Pure heart. Those who are pure, who desire holiness, puts the symbol above the semantic definition, because those things are in flux. What is a domain? What is an adobe? What is your house? What is pro-life? What is marriage? Right? Those things are always getting redefined. So our symbolic, the definition, the heart of the words as such, which started with sacred nomenclature, what is that? That's how you define truth. If you don't have a solid understanding of sacred nomenclature and the underpinnings of what that is, you will get stuck in debates where they're defining terms and then you're defining terms. Before you know it, you're arguing about how to screw your parents out of the money they deserve.
Yeah.
You know? All right, Joe, are
it's-
you going to... Bro, I've been battling trying to get... I've been trying to get Discord to work for a long time. And
Telegram?
That's what I meant, yeah. And it's just not been working.
Here, you can read
Updated
mine,
it.
dude.
Now
Here.
I gotta find a way to delete it, and I
Go
can't find out how to delete it. It's so annoying. Anyways, we can just blow the phone up. I've been trying. Doesn't work. Okay, here we are. You are sinful, right?
Mhm.
There we're going. You are sinful because you are born sinful, not because you sin. As we know, the Jewish people have rejected Jesus, and the kingdom offer is now on the table. Now, instead of the kingdom offer, we have the kingdom program in full swing here, where Jesus is teaching the disciples how to tend the flock. As a result, Jesus' entire method of ministry has changed. Jesus now speaks to the people in parables and heals those with faith or out of his compassion. In the parable of the spiritual defilement, what goes into a man, what comes out of a man, we get deep insight into what sinful nature is, further correcting the erroneous conception of a sin prevalent in Jewish culture. Let's go over the points Jesus is making. Number one, you are born sinful. There are times where we may feel more sinful and less sinful depending on our behavior. While this may be true in a sense when action and course of decision is added up, it is not true when evaluating our spiritual circumstances. Kind of reminds me of like a little bit of shit
and your cake batter still makes your cake
Yeah.
batter shitty. Like
Mhm.
no matter how much or how less, I'm still not eating it.
Yeah.
You know. Um, Simply put, you are sinful because you were born sinful, not because you sinned. That is why Jesus says it's what comes out of a man that defiles him. It's what's already inside of him that makes it sinful. No matter how many laws and works you accomplish, you are no less sinful. If that were true, you could work your way up into heaven, and there would be no purpose for grace. The only thing that can redeem your sinful state is the blood of Jesus. His perfect sacrifice for your sins alone is able to make you white as snow. It is through grace accepted that we are renewed. This offends the Jewish tradition to the core. In those times, clean and unclean meant determining the quality and state of things put into or on the body. This misapprehension of God's law led people to see sin in a skewed light. A person could be quasi clean or unclean if they adhered to certain protocols administered by the Mishnah. Sin was something you could wash off through prescription and work. Jesus is telling us sin is a part of your biology and will continue to be a part of you till you die. Nothing you can do will purge it out. You are dependent on God's grace and His grace alone. For those who misinterpreting his teaching to mean that you can go on sinning, this is also incorrect. Sorry, fellas. The next point will address this common misconception of grace versus works versus sinful nature. Number 2, for out of the heart comes evil thoughts, murder, adultery, sexual immorality, theft, false witness, slander. In Matthew 5:27, we learn that sinful thought is on par with sinful action. We again see this teaching here. Many think that this action is some summation of sin, when in reality, it is the last link in the chain of sinning, starting with the thought. The Bible uses the word heart as a euphemism to describe the core of our personhood, the organ responsible for our thought. This organ, when covered in the blood of Jesus, is made perfect. However, because of our flesh, we will contend with sin until we die. 2 Corinthians 12:7. So to keep me from becoming conceited because of the surpassing greatness of the revelations, a thorn was given me in the flesh, a messenger of Satan to harass me, to keep me from becoming conceited. 3 times I have pleaded with the Lord about this, that should leave me. But he said to me, my grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness. That is Paul for you, all that don't know.
Mhm.
God is showing Paul that grace and humility is a solution for his sin, not that he can overcome sinning by himself in his lifetime. The time spent on earth contending with flesh means growing in the spirit, and as a result, sinning less. The fruit of a man drawing near to God is not that he ceases sinning altogether, but that the goodness of God's grace shows him how to worship in his weakness and glory in God's perfection. Living a life on earth is just one piece of our existence. The fulfillment of our being will be realized in our union with Christ in the eternal life to come. And even then, we will continue to grow in God's infinite nature, meaning that we will never cease to be amazed by God's magnificent glory. But until then, sin is in you, and you will contend with your flesh. So give glory to God in your weakness.
Hmm.
Very well.
Is that
Written.
it?
In that section.
Oh, we got more.
There's more.
Okay. There's more. Testing the faith and a lesson in prayer. The Canaanite woman didn't give up. She passed the test and also gave us a great lesson in prayer and pleading. We know that Jesus heals Gentiles. In Matthew 8:5-13, we see Jesus heal the servant of a centurion. So why give this poor lady such a tough time? Number 1, test of faith. There were countless people asking Jesus for things. Most people would ask, and if they didn't receive, would move on and discount Jesus as the Messiah. Here, Jesus tests the woman's faith. Will she turn away after she is called a dog? After she is ignored? No. Why? Because she had faith that Jesus was the Son of David, the Messiah, was right in all he did, and could heal her daughter, his daughter. Referencing our terms and people, we know that Canaanites were cursed to serve. This woman was aware of this and accustomed to the Jews viewing her race in this way. She also knew that asking a Jew for anything would most likely result in rejection. But instead of taking offense and being prideful, she responded to truth in humility. This woman knew that the common view of the time was that the Messiah would be only for the Jews. The truth is that the Messiah would come first for the Jews and then the Gentiles. So Jesus tested her faith by ignoring her and calling her a dog. If you think that's harsh, just take a moment to think of a time when your faith was tested. A time of testing comes when you feel abandoned by God. Bad stuff is happening in your life that you don't feel you deserve, and it just keeps coming. We have all been there. God is testing us to see if we will remain faithful and worship in the storm. In humility, we recognize we are all dogs and undeserving of grace, but that God loves us and calls us his children. Because the kingdom offer is now off the table, it takes faith to accept grace. This account is beautiful summation of this process. How to make it through a test. You plead and plead some more. You don't give up and move on to other gods. You remain steadfast. God likes when we put him on the spot, but it's not so much that we are reminding God of who he is. It's more we are reminding ourselves of his person and showing God we know his word. When reading in the Psalms or any book of the prophets, we see these figures recount to God his promises and his character. They pray to God saying, "You promised us this," or "You are this kind of God," etc. There are pages and pages of examples of this. God loves it when we pray scripture back to him. It shows him we have faith in what he already said he would do. The Canaanite woman did this when she said to Jesus, "The dogs get the crumbs of the children." She is in effect finishing the doctrine that Jesus started. In effect, Messiah comes for the Jews first and then comes for the Gentiles. This kind of testing comes to us all, and it is here that our faith grows. When we deny ourselves the right to feel abandoned by God or feel slighted by unfair circumstances, we affirm God is God, and that our time in the testing grounds is part of his plan for spiritual maturity for us. In humility, we find boldness. Do you want to finish this off, Mike?
Sure thing. Lesson in ministry. Getting deja vu. Didn't we just read about how Jesus fed the 5,000? Why are we reading almost the exact same miracle? Did Matthew have a brain fart and put the same miracle in twice? Nope. Just hard-headed men having to learn the same lesson twice. Don't we have a lot in common with the disciples? Remember, this kingdom offer is off the table. Jesus now is focusing his efforts on the kingdom program or boot camp training for the future leaders of the church. Jesus is teaching the lads how to serve, and they are having trouble moving from Jewish cultural templates of what a spiritual leader is and what Jesus is teaching them a spiritual leader should be. As we went over in Matthew 14, the condescending and the Jewish spiritual leaders were put on a pedestal. These men were most often condescending and self-enterprising. Jesus is testing the disciples again with a similar test to see if they have learned anything from last time. But this time with the added challenge of serving Gentiles. We know that Jesus was deep in the Decapolis area, a region dominated by Gentiles. Knowing this, we can assume that the 4,000 were predominantly Gentiles. So if the disciples thought they had it rough with one little Canaanite woman pestering them, now they had 4,000 Gentile dogs to feed. Think if the disciples were not excited to feed the 5,000 Jews, how do you think they felt about feeding 4,000 Gentiles? Probably not good. So Jesus walks them through another lesson in ministry, teaching them that service is not about what you have, You must give out of lacking, and rely on God, and that you must serve all men when they come to you in need. Note, throughout these notes, it may appear that we are coming down on the disciples and Pharisees, and we kind of are, but the truth is, these men are like us. So whenever you sense admonishment afoot, apply it to the modern day church and yourself. These are tools for self-examination. That's why they are in the Bible. We are not above the lessons and carnal proclivities the disciples and Pharisees had. Most of these guys probably were probably good dudes by common standards, but those are not God's standards. So take the lesson correctly and don't fall into the same pit of self-assured pride these fellows did. Acknowledge we are always contending with the flesh and must always be on guard for pride and arrogance. Use these lessons to remind you of what you're up against.
Yeah. Serving out of the heart. Out of the heart comes service.
I think that whole chapter is just kind of like out of the heart.
Yeah.
Versus
It's
law.
really hitting me hard because the book I'm reading is all about that. About being a parent, looking at your kid, being like, how do I get my kid to worship God because he loves God out of his heart? Because then he's going to want to do good things.
It's hard with kids.
So if he's
too, 'cause
acting out or he's doing something wrong, what does that mean about his heart? It's the question of the heart. I mean, I go through periods of time where I forget to ask myself, like, if I'm dealing with an issue, I'll try to fix it from the back end or the front end rather. Like, what can I do to fix on the front end? Let's touch up the paint here or whatever. But I forget to ask what's going on in my heart. Why is this happening?
Mhm.
What is this? Where is this coming from? That's where you just see the manifestation of it in your actions or your feelings. You know, you see it happening in life. But to look inside, to self-examine through prayer and pleading, that's where you can sense where your heart truly is. You ask God to show you what's going on with my heart. How do I fix it? Am I not giving joyfully? Am I not serving joyfully? I know I have to serve, but I'm not feeling good about it. You know, what's going on in my heart? Do I resent these people? Why do I resent these people? Why am I not doing the things that I know are right? My heart is the first place I need to ask, start looking. So how do you look? You look through prayer. You look through the Bible. You repeat God's promises back to him. We see that so often in the Psalms, like we in the note said, men desiring to get their heart to the right place, writhing in agony and anguish, wanting so bad for their heart to feel like it's settled in the right place. You can see the tears on the paper when you read it. You can see their hearts breaking in half, and they're reading the scripture back to God. You promised me you are the God who gives us a new heart. You are the God. You are my foundation. You are the, speaking the logos as a prophetic word to the healing of the heart. We need it.
Yeah, and I think like Christians who especially grew up in the church and maybe didn't go through, like, I would put myself in this camp. I think the struggle we have is that kind of self-righteous Pharisee type mindset, because you grew up in the environment, you have these ingrained standards in your head that a lot of times you end up following kind of for the same reason the Pharisees are following the law, I think, where it's more of a, you're kind of programmed to do it and it's not like out of your heart.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think it's just something for those of us in that camp, like you didn't come from hell to find Jesus. You just kind of came in here through the church. You got to self-reflect on that stuff because it's so easy to get very Pharisaic in how you view things.
People read the Bible like that all the time. We forget that the way they communicated something was so that we could self-examine, right? They're all stories for us to put ourselves in their shoes.
Mm-hmm.
So we're like, it's like Jordan Peterson with his ordinary men pitch. He's like, everybody you talk to would say, man, if I was in Nazi Germany, I wouldn't have killed the Jews. It's like, do you really think that? Do you really think you would do that? How do you know? Or if I was such and such, I wouldn't have done such and such. That is the Pharisee.
Mm-hmm.
think most people are just
You have no idea.
armchair critics, especially now more than ever with like social media and YouTube and just being able to comment on something and be all self-righteous and like, throw the brick at the football game at the screen. Like my buddy used to have this like foam brick he'd throw at the screen. And it's like, we don't really know. And our idea and conception of like being in the driver's seat versus playing like passenger princess is so far detracted from like having respect for the person that's in that situation. And when reading that chapter, I'm always like just so impressed with the Canaanite woman. Like, and she reminds me of like the Roman centurion as well, who came up to Christ before. And he's like, I'm also a man of authority. You don't have to talk, just say the word. Like, that's how we do things. Christ's like, both of these are Gentiles, And it's because he opens up the chapter saying, I came here for basically the Jews. That's what he's saying. Like, I came here for them. And so many times in life, we're confronted with challenges, things that are like, we either want them. Like, she's obviously motivated by, the sick person in her life, wants to see them heal. That's a strong motivation, like one of the strongest for her child. Her well-being is like number one. Whether it's like a business or whether it's like, whatever it is in life, challenges come. And like, here she is being like insulted, being called a dog, like for coming up to him.
It's wild.
Like it's worse than just being like, oh, like you're not allowed here or whatever it is. Like, you're a dog, like you're being insulted. And she just goes through and is like, but even the dogs, she challenges him. She doesn't just like settle back and take the abuse or like, like act like she's been insulted. That insult goes right past her head. Like, her ego's got nothing to do with anything at that point in time. She's after one thing, and that is to get her child healed. And she knows he can do it. So she doesn't feel like that affront of like attack. She's like, no, we can work with this. We can work with this because even the dogs get the crumbs. And it's like, Jesus is so impressed with that. He's like, wow, like this is what I'm talking about, people. Like, because his disciples are all Jews, they're all looking, they're all expecting him, to be like, oh, what are you doing with this Canaanite woman? He's making an example of like this. This is what we need to be doing. This is how we approach the Pharisees. This is how Jesus approached the Pharisees so often, is right back at him. I mean, he called them a brood of vipers once, but he was challenging them right back with what they offered him, keeping the point on the actual discussion, not being attacked, not feeling attacked, not having the little ego death occur, like my puppy got hit on the side of the road or anything. None of that. And that to me is just profound. So profound, because it falls into like, looking at the plank in your own eye, talking about the Pharisees, what you said, just the perspective of like what a true man, like a man of God or a woman of God has, and how powerful that is. And when you need it, when you need that focus, you need to be able to pay attention to what's of value.
Well, people put themselves on a pedestal, so like Mike was saying about being a part of a church, growing up in a church, there's a sense of entitlement that begins to get in you. And you're like, oh, I know what sins are. You have that sin issue, You start to put the pearls on the swine. But we are all broken. We are all sinful. Our good deeds are rags. What is happening to you, son? You're forgetting who you are in Christ. You're the redeemed. This woman wasn't that. Tests of faith are always very, like, if you want to look at them simply, do you fear God above all things? Period. Because if the test of faith comes, whatever's being taken from you, if it's your daughter, your wealth, everything for Job, do you still fear God? Is God number one? That's where the test of faith for her was. She knew God could do whatever he wanted to. Call her a dog, kill her child, let her live. So she went in, not with the presupposition of I'm a Jew and I need Messiah owes me, son of Abraham over here. No, she knew exactly who she was and the power of God. And that gave her freedom and humility. because she knew the truth was before her. Jesus was before her. And that's the beauty, if you could think about being Jesus at that time, because every situation is an opportunity for him to teach. Every opportunity is so far, it's an eternal, it's like a living piece of history that continues to live. Like that woman, whether she knew it or not, was going to be, she did not know it, I'm almost sure of that, a piece of living eternal lesson. So Jesus, in talking to her from the beginning, as he tested her, had that, you could just see Jesus having the joy of knowing his daughter was going to help him teach that lesson.
You know, she
So beautiful to me, because he must have known he's the Son of God. He's going to know the outcome of these things. And to use that situation, as brutal as it is on the surface of God, Jesus calling her a dog, he also called her daughter at the end. You know, and that's the full story. We're all dogs until we come to Jesus in humility and love and say, you're the King of Kings. I really do fear you above everything else. I love you above all things else. Son, daughter at that point, right? I think that's beautiful.
She probably heard that a lot from the Jews, though. Being a Canaanite woman, she probably was used to being called a dog by Jews. She probably had it happen like a bunch of times in her life.
So
She's
were
probably
they
expecting it
ruled by the
going into
Romans
there.
then too?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
The
imagine
Canaanites, the Jews hated, or excuse me, the Romans loathed their tradition of burning their kids and getting tattoos. They saw them as like a very difficult people. So I know that the Canaanites, Amalekites, there's some groups of people, and like it said in the notes, like Joe was alluding to, they had a curse on them to be a labor force, like a working people, kind of like Noah's son. I think it was Ham. He's like, you're cursed to serve your brothers. Some people think that came along with that sort of perpetuation of that curse. And so you're right. Being a Canaanite was like, you know, almost having like the mark of Cain on your head, you know. So
yeah, definitely.
yeah.
She's probably used to that talk, you know, which is a sign.
But it's the humility of us all saying we have the mark of sin on us. You know, David talks about being in his womb, in his mother's womb, having sin. You know, the wickedness is even in the infant, the child, the baby.
Yeah, not to teach them to sin. They figure it out real fast.
They're little Caesars.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Definitely.
They'll lie, and yeah, it's funny to watch them interact.
But the symbol here, just to bring that full circle, is the heart. Like, what does the heart represent? The wellspring of who you are. That's how you judge who you are. That's how God judges who you are, is your heart. That deserves thought and prayer. Like, God, show me what's in my heart. Lord, I want to fear you, not in my language. I want to fear you in my heart.
Yeah.
I want to love you from my heart. I want to be the new creation. I want that. Like it says, I think in who's the guy who took over after Moses? Joshua. He's like, in that book, I think somewhere God says, I will give you a new heart. I'll take your heart of stone out, give you a new heart. That's what we should be preoccupied with instead of hiding behind the semantic. Oh, I say I fear God.
Let's
Let's
also hide behind our action or our behavior too. We all get. It's super easy to be legalistic and just think I'm checking all the boxes, and then it's like, well, your relationship with God is super distant, and
I've been there.
And you're essentially a Pharisee.
Yeah, like what is your relationship with God according to whatever preacher you're looking at or your best friends do, and just kind of mimetically copying their relationship and thinking that it's going to make yours better, something that you have to invest in sovereignly, and it's not going to be like someone else's. But one thing I really liked when we had our meeting with David Gornowski, we were talking about pro-life, was his pushback was so cool. Because he was like, here we are having like a semantic discussion about pro-life and that being like about abortion specifically. But then he brings in like, are we really pro-life? Like looking at like, what do we mean by pro-life? And then he brings in like the wars and the kids on Gaza Strip and like, it doesn't all life matter? Are you really pro-life, or are you just pro like abortion? Are you like, micro analyzing a specific point of what life is instead of like missing the big picture? And you could see like he came at it with his heart because he had to think about like, what does pro-life mean? You have to have like that moment with yourself where you extract yourself from the conversation of semantic, and current
Mhm.
trend and whatever that is, and how easy is it caught up in that because
But I also think you can go too far with that.
You
because-
can.
well, for sure.
Well, I
mean,
think we
because-
drew the distinction there where it's like take a win where you can get a win, bro.
Right.
Like,
Yeah,
what are we
'cause
going to do here? But the idea was to inform the listener, the guys, even ourselves, to ask those deeper questions and see where we actually stand. Otherwise, we're making the same mistakes the Pharisees did about the Sabbath, say, where they have selective outrage to certain things,
Yeah.
but not other things. But you're talking about the one thing here,
Mhm.
like that's what they forget is that's
Well,
connected.
see, that's the cool thing about symbols. And like when we said pro-life, we were thinking like life, that was just abortion. And like when you think of life as a symbol, then you think of like all life, right? You're like all of a sudden it's become so much more than like a single word, and like that's the power of symbols.
Yeah.
Because they broaden your scope. They put you in touch of like what the heart or like the
heart.
bone marrow of the situation, like
Yeah.
the DNA of it. They're giving you that scope and that vision for it.
And the
right?
same thing happened. We talked, Mike and I were on a conversation. I think you guys talked about it before, where Andrew
About marriage.
Wilson
Crucible?
about marriage. And you're like, hey, I heard Andrew saying that we, as Christians, we shouldn't encourage other people, secular people, to get married. And as soon as you said that, I was like, yeah, why wouldn't we? Why would we? We'd be encouraging them to do something that is destined for failure.
It wouldn't even be.
It
the
wouldn't
question would
be
it's not
fair
even
to them.
real because they're not making a covenant.
In
before
addition to
God.
that, but even before that, yeah, it's like why would I tell you to do that if it's not sacred?
Mhm.
That's not fair to you. That's not fair to you.
Yeah, it's basically a pragmatic thing. Well, you should sign the state contract so you'd get less taxes.
So, like Joe was saying, the symbol of marriage is sacred. It's
Mhm.
informed by the divine as a representation of Christ and his church. It's union. It's beautiful. That's for the church.
yeah,
That's seeing it, the symbolic implication of what we know it should be, and then skipping all the bull crap makes life a lot easier because then we can and that's the duty of men. I've been focusing on this a lot. I told you guys this. The most attractive thing, meaning the most high value thing, is that when a man can assign value properly to something. And the struggle I've faced is being wrong over and over again because I'm using scientific materialism, graphs, stats, blah, 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 to define truth. That's not what Jesus used. Yes, they're helpful. I'm not saying forget them. But when it comes to issues of the heart, which are what we're talking about, marriage, pro-life, we don't use those things. They get in the way. They become what the Pharisees had issues with Sabbath, crushing grain, or taking stuff that they didn't want to give to their parents. Little caveats, scapegoats. If I'm pro-life, then I can support the war in Ukraine because I've scapegoated on that. And it comes back to that self-examination. What am I scapegoating on? Why are those lives less important than these lives? Why am I telling an atheist to get married? Right?
Mm-hmm.
We have to see the symbolic, parabolic. Those are all just semantic words to describe that there are eternal meanings to the logos that are non-negotiable, and they win every time. They win. They crush. They win. They assault falsehood perfectly.
Well, and I think like we talked about too is like the empathy needed to understand their perspectives. Like an atheist perspective should be pragmatism. Like this is pragmatic, and that's what I'm going to follow for my opinions and stuff. And that's how they kind of operate. It's like they're not going to have the morals you want until they find Jesus and have that lens through the which they're viewing things.
Mhm.
Like, why would the atheist be pragmatic about abortion? Why wouldn't, like Bill Maher, he's super honest about it. Like, yeah, I know it's killing a baby and I'm fine with that. We got enough people. Like,
Yeah.
that's a true pragmatic view of someone being honest. And with his, if you have empathy and realize the perspective he's coming from,
Yeah.
that makes sense. And you're not going to try to convince him otherwise. He needs Jesus to view the world through a different lens.
That empathy helps you to connect with the atheist who wants to get married,
Mm-hmm.
right? Just like I think Joe brought it up when we were talking to David. He's like, one of you guys did. You brought up empathy. Empathy was brought up. And David made that really interesting pivot where he's like, yeah, I can connect with the person who's pro-choice because they're trying to look out for the mother. You connect with the idea, whatever little Christ analog they're trying to be for that person, that victim. That empathy builds a bridge. So that it's so important. So important.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is.
Because then you're just, it's not
Because
the
they're
point.
trying to protect something. Everyone, even like with all the issues today, whether they're pro LGBTQ or they want to give trans children a sex change, like they want to like protect his identity or what. I mean, it's absurd, but there is like this. I believe like a lot of the people actually do believe they're trying to do something right
Mhm.
and support somebody. The underdog,
Mm-hmm.
the victim. The ultimately that's what David Gornowski talks about, the haunting of Christ in our world. Like we're always trying to like aid the victim or help out these phantom victims that don't really exist. They're actually not, but you can see their hearts trying, and if you acknowledge that through empathy, you can build a bridge there instead of just calling crazy people.
Mhm.
Well, and it also just shows it's going back to ordinary men that just realization that you can logic your way also in that sense to
Mhm.
crazy conclusions that you think you're in the right on.
Yeah.
It's like people can think
It's like, I'll turn my neighbor in for not wearing a mask.
Mhm.
right. It gets to that point.
Mhm.
And like people can think in their bedrooms at night how great, and their thought train be crystal clear, dude. But you put them in a stress situation where they
Sure.
have to choose, and there's a group of people around them that's doing one thing, and they have to go deep inside to make a choice.
Their heart comes
Yeah.
out. Yeah.
Their
Who are they
heart-
afraid of?
Their heart comes out. Who are they
Yeah.
afraid of?
Who are they afraid
Exactly.
of? You afraid of that mob, bro? You
You-
afraid of that mob? You afraid of getting your head chopped off?
It's
Yeah.
that's the situation people don't understand.
Time of testing. You have to be brought to that time of testing where your life is on the line. I get scared when I think about tests of faith. Those days, you'll get there if you stick with the Lord long enough. You're reading your Bible every day. You're praying every day. You're thinking about God every day. And you feel like you're on an island in a different galaxy away from God. You don't feel nearness to God. And you don't know why. I'll read my Bible some more. I'll pray some more. But God is trying to show you something going on in your heart. And that's how he does it. And it is a scary place to be. But you will go there because he loves you. He's going to show you what it feels like to not be around him sometimes because you're arrogant and checking your boxes, doing all this stuff. But God demands more. That's his nature. He made you that way. He wants you to grow.
It's kind of crazy because like bringing up the Canaanite woman and the centurion, like the Canaanite woman obviously is like a slave. She's been through that a million times. Like the Roman centurion, he's been through hell. The dude's hardcore. Like he knows power when he sees power. He knows truth when he sees truth. And I think that's the point. It's like there are the Jews. They have all the prophecy. They have all the. They should know exactly who Christ is when he's in front of them, but they don't. And it's like these people who are they kind of like in the world, so to speak, and they know and they're confronted with like the idea of like what it is to truly know what true truth is when they see it, and they see it, but they never grew up around it. They weren't the church people, steeped in church and reading their Bible and praying every day. They were none of those people.
Yeah.
So it's like you said, check the boxes.
Well, it's like because
You could
he's
read and
demanding
pray every single day, but
So-
that's not necessarily going to bring you closeness with God.
no, because
not
you're
to
not
say that you should.
no.
But,
But it's this is why I wanted to finish the thought, and I'm glad you brought that up, because you're checking those boxes, they're good, but you're also not denying yourself. Like in the beginning of your walk, denying yourself does mean reading one chapter a day and praying. Like that is denying your normal routine. But God is asking you to, if you're doing all those things all the time, maybe it's you need to give to somebody, forgive somebody in your family. He's looking at cleaning up your life in a way that you have not yet paid attention to. That's going to demand you to deny yourself in a hard way. The centurion, people don't think about this, but he was a Roman official. And for him to approach Jesus, that did not look good on his resume. So he was denying himself the ability to ascend in his ranks as a Roman official. He was denying himself because he put his faith in Jesus. And so that's why it's hard to grow in the Lord when you're just checking boxes, because the Holy Spirit, if you look at your heart and you feel like you're on that island in a different galaxy, the first time you go through it, you will feel it's the worst feeling ever. But if what follows that is, Lord, show me what's going on in my heart, where do I have to put my attention now? What kind of changes need to happen? He always answers. Always answers. That's where your faith comes, because you fear him above all things. Even though I am the one person that feels like God's not talking to, or I'm alone, I still know God is here. You don't accept the lie of that, right? But it's painful because you got to pick up your cross and deny whatever it is he's pointing at you. What is it that I need to fix?
I think all great leaders understand that intrinsically at some level. You're going to be denying yourself and your needs and your personal gain to get to where you need to go.
Yeah.
I think one parable to close with that's a little bit further in Matthew. We can close with this, but because this goes back to, they actually just preached about this at our church last Sunday, so that's why I thought of it. How like this Canaanite woman recognized Jesus, and the Pharisees who grew up in the church didn't. It's the parable of the two sons, and it kind of relates to this. But he goes, "What do you think? A man had two sons, and he went to the first and said, 'Son, go and work in the vineyard today.' And he said, 'I will not.' But afterward he changed his mind and went. And he went to the other son and said the same. And he answered, 'I will go, sir.' But he did not go. Which of the two did the will of his father?" They said, "The first." And he goes, "Truly I say to you, the tax collectors and prostitutes go into the kingdom of God before you. For John came to you in the way of righteousness, and you did not believe him. But the tax collectors and the prostitutes believed him. And even when you saw it, you did not afterward change your minds and believe him."
That's it.
Bam.
Yeah.
They said one thing and didn't follow through.
I've been thinking about some of like the power of some of those smaller parables. Just
Bro.
how like, I mean, it's so easy, like the log in my eye or the
Mhm.
log in the speck in yours, and these things are like you're easy to take at face value. But if you really like allow them to like think about them and let them touch you, I don't know how to explain this, but like
No, I know
you'll
what you
know
mean.
when they're like in your life, and you'll be like, wow, like this has just been said 100,000 different times
Yeah.
in like 20 million different self-help
Mhm.
books across the world, but it's this simple,
Mhm.
and that's what they're trying to help you with.
Well, Christ is also telling us that that's the beauty of the truth. I think that we will read some of those parables in heaven and still be met with Christ. Those stories are that powerful. They're stories of truth. We're so lucky to have them. There's one thing that for all the troubles that being a Protestant has given us, our love for Scripture, to like embrace those words, to hold those stories inside of our hearts, and like to have them. Man, I'm so grateful for that.
For anyone that has a Bible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Those little words, man. They're little black words on a page, dude. They're just little
Well,
words.
The funny part about
you
that's
know?
why I bring up the self-help books. It's like it's everywhere. Like
Yeah.
you don't
Mhm.
have to just look at it. It's been around forever, and they're just retooling it, you know. And you're
Yeah,
like,
it's like a
wow,
grift, basically.
it kind of is a grift.
Mm.
I mean, I love music. We all use the same 12 notes, 24 including half steps, but yeah, it's always the same song. But it's good to hear it a little different every once in a while.
That's true.
And go back to Bach and Beethoven. Still the OGs.
Yep.
Right.
Well, guys, thanks for joining us today. And like we said, we would have been live, but we got RFK'd. Yeah, we were trying to go live, and it just kept rejecting our attempt, saying they were having some server errors. So we did a pre-record. So we'll see when
style.
this gets posted. But we will see you next time.
See you, boys.